loves. Good morning. We're going to be talking about Job 29 and 30 today. And just in case y'all didn't realize it, I have a little chicken nugget with me today who's going to be joining us for her very first YouTube Bible study. Also, just a side note, baby wearing is not for the faint of heart because people make this look very easy, but I'm telling you, it'll stretch your back out a little bit. But Dust ran to, he's still on paternity leave, but he ran to just check things out at work and drop our little Mia off for her little haircut and then drop Buddy off from school. So I've got a few minutes to go through Job chapter 29 and chapter 30 with you guys. And so I'm going to throw on some makeup, which is something that I've been trying to do every day to make me feel a little bit better postpartum, and talk through this scripture. It's really good. We had to do a little bit of an adjustment there. Get your little face showing. So Job chapter 29, we start out and we see Job's heart, and he's kind of reflecting on what I would call, or what we call in South Mississippi, of the prime. You know, usually when you're sitting around with all those pawpaws and they're like, well, back in my day, that's what I envision Job doing right here. And we really don't know how long Job suffered. We really don't know how long Job suffered. But it was long enough for him to feel like it was an eternity. And I don't care if you've ever been through any season of suffering, you know that if it's days, if it's weeks, if it's years, it feels like it lasts 10 times longer than however it actually does. But in verse 2 and 3, he says, "Oh, that I were as in the days of old, as in the days when God watched over me, when his lamp shone on my head, and by his light I walked through darkness, and I was in my prime." That's where I got my prime from. "When the friendship of God was upon my tent, when the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were all around me, when my steps were washed with butter, and the rock poured out for me streams of oil." He's reflecting on the days when he had security, and we know that because later on he talks about how God removed his security. I think it's in chapter 30. But right here he's talking about when he remembers God's presence being so heavy on his life, when he knew that the Lord was with him, that God's favor was on him, that his possessions were going good, that his businesses were going good. That's what he means here by his steps were washed with butter and rock poured out from streams of oil. He was known for like his livestock and also his oil vineyard, apparently. Olive groves, not oil vineyard. And I think it's important to note here that so many times when God is taking us through a season that is a struggling season, it is so easy for us to look back on a season of the mountaintop and think, man, I miss that so much. Like, those were the good old days, like those were the days that I long for. It's normal. That's a normal part of suffering. Because none of us truly want to experience suffering. Like, we don't go out looking for that. But in our weakness, Christ's strength is made known. In our weakness is when we grow the most. The valley is where the most growth takes place. And God is growing Job's faith just like he does ours when we walk through hard situations. It doesn't mean that the pain is less. It means that the purpose is greater. That's a word in and of itself. But anyways, we'll jump into the rest of the verses of this whole entire chapter. And Job goes in verse 7 and he talks about how he used what God blessed him with to bless the needy. So Job wasn't stingy with what God gave him. He was a man that God looked at as blameless and righteous. And so we know that Job took everything that God had given him. And through these verses, we know that he helped people who needed help. And it made me think, like yesterday I made a video about that verse in Luke that says, don't covet. I'm paraphrasing here. Don't covet. You're not measured by your possessions. Our possessions that God gives us, the things that he blesses us with, is so that his glory can be revealed through us to other people. It is not so that we can store up treasures this side of heaven. And sometimes God does tremendously bless people with immeasurable blessings that some of us can't even, wrap our minds around. But God has blessed each of us with everything that we need to bring him glory. And we just need to be faithful with all that he has given us and help as many people as we can. But there's a but that comes with that. In chapter 30, jumping on over into chapter 30, In verse 11, Job says, because God has loosed my cord and humbled me. So having a bunch of possessions, that verse basically means, if you look at the study notes, that God removed Job's security. So he loosed his cord. He removed Job's security. And we can't allow the things that God has blessed us with to be the thing that we lean on for our security. Like, we can't allow that to be the thing that makes us feel like we've got it together, you know, because in a moment, all of that can be taken away. I think a lot of people have experienced that over the last several years post-COVID, where things just got really expensive, and so many people had great savings accounts banked up and all this kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden everything gets more expensive, and it's like, where did it go? You know, people are having to pull from you know, long-term savings and retirement plans and different things like that just to live, and it's been really difficult to just make it because of the cost of living just going up, you know. And as difficult as this may be, we just have to remember, sorry girl, I didn't mean to scare you. We just have to remember that the things that God blesses us with cannot take the place of the one who is blessing us with them. We can't want the blessings more than we want God. We can't want the healing more than the healer, all of that kind of stuff. We have to actually know that our security comes from God himself, and that is enough. It reminds me of that verse where God's like, if I take care of the birds, if I take care of the sparrows, if I feed even they, how much more? How much more? How much more am I going to feed you and clothe you? If I dress the lilies, how much more am I going to clothe you? God's going to take care of us and give us everything that we need to be able to accomplish what he has us to accomplish this side of heaven. And that seems, every time I say something like that, and the people who are suffering and who are struggling with knowing where their next meal comes from, when I have a fridge full of groceries and people that have blessed us with bringing over stuff since baby Baylor was born, I have a fridge full of leftovers to choose from, a pantry full of cereals and all kinds of junk food that I don't even need. And there are people who are wondering where their next meal is going to come from. God says, I'm going to take care of you to give you everything that you need to accomplish your purpose for me this side of heaven. Good gracious, we are so incredibly blessed. We're so incredibly blessed. If you know where your next meal is coming from, whether it's the $5 in your pocket that you're going to spend at McDonald's, or whether it's because you've got a fridge full of groceries, or whatever it is, you're so blessed. We're so incredibly blessed, and God has been so good. Don't take his blessings and not use them to help other people. Job did that. It doesn't mean that suffering's still not going to come, because it very well could, and God says that it will. He says, in this world, Jesus told us, in this world you're going to have trouble, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. This place is not our resting place. This place isn't supposed to be the place where we find the most comfort and peace. This place isn't supposed to be the place where we're like, I got it. We're all together. We're good to go. Nothing's going to come against me. The Bible also says, no weapon formed against you will prosper. Doesn't say that they're not going to be formed. It says no weapon formed against you will prosper. Not that there won't be weapons. And again, we get a glimpse of how Job is really feeling in verses 16 and 17 of chapter 30. It says, and now my soul is poured out within me. Days of affliction have taken hold of me. The night racks my bone, and the pain that gnaws me takes no rest. I don't know if you've ever been there, but if you've ever been in the midst of intense feeling of suffering, it is so hard to rest. It's almost impossible. It is seemingly, literally impossible to lay your head down at night and go to bed. Honestly, nighttime is the worst. There's no sun, there's no vitamin D coming through the windows, there's no external encouragement. It's just you and your thoughts and the darkness and the Lord. That's what you have to lean on in those moments. Because I'm telling you, if you don't, it'll feel like you're going to literally drown. And then in verses 24, 25, 26, and I think that's it. It says, "Yet does not one in a heap of ruin stretch out his hand, and in his disaster cry for help. Did I not weep for him whose day was hard, and not my soul grieved for the needy? But when I hoped for good, evil came, and when I waited for light, darkness came." What Job is saying there is like, no one is coming to my rescue. Like, all of the people that I wept for because they were hurting and they needed God, all of the people that I helped, no one is coming to save me. No one is going to rescue me. And it's important to remember that we cannot lean on external things for our comfort. We can't bank on the world being our comfort, because it's not. It's never going to be. God is the only one who can comfort us when we belong to him. And if we seek external comfort, it's going to be short-lived, it's going to be fake, and it is not going to last. And it's going to leave you just as empty as you were before, if not more. The only comfort that can change your circumstance is the comfort that comes from the one who can change your circumstance. Or better yet, who can give you peace in your circumstance. The world can't do that. They can try to bail you out or validate your feelings or whatever it is, but the world cannot either change your circumstance or truly give you peace to know that whatever you're facing, you can overcome it. And then here we go. In verse 28, it says, "I go about darkened, but not by the sun. I stand up in the assembly and cry for help." I go about darkened, but not by the sun. The only thing that I could think is, have you ever been there? Because I have. Like, I have been there where it didn't feel like any day was going to bring relief. Like, it could be the most beautiful, sunny, lovely, as Pierce calls it, day, and it could feel like the darkest night because of whatever situation that I was in at the time. Whether it was intense bullying in high school, postpartum depression with my first, finding out that I had several health conditions right in the midst of COVID, whatever it was, the miscarriage, so many things. I felt like I was absolutely drowning in some of the brightest days, work issues, whatever. And that is literally such a lonely place to be. It's exactly where the enemy wants you. The enemy wants you to get to a place where you feel like, number one, you're lost in your situation. There's no relief ever going to come. Number two, you're completely alone. Remember, even Job's friends were like hounding him. Number three, you're longing for relief that you feel like is never going to make it. Number four, you're longing for an answer from God. That's the biggest one, is that you're longing for an answer from God. You're like, God, where are you? Are you going to show up for me? Like, are you going to, where are you? Like, why haven't you answered me? You said you're going to be there for me, and the enemy's constantly telling you, like, if he loves you, he would answer. And you're like, okay, yeah, maybe that's true. And you start listening to the lies of the enemy and you get all in your head, and God's like, I'm going to answer you, but it's going to be in the proper time because there's something I'm trying to teach you in this. We have to remember that everything that God does, I say it every time, everything that God does and allows us to go through, Romans 8:28, it is for our good and for his glory. If our God was enough to save us, he is enough to sustain us, no matter what our circumstances may be. I love you, friends. I hope that has encouraged you. If you're following along with the 3-year reading plan, I encourage you to subscribe, to join our Patreon if you've not already. It's not necessary, but if you want to support this channel, that is a great way to do it. And me and the little chicken nugget say, have a great day. We love you. Bye, y'all.